Hello and welcome to episode 10 of Off the Fence. This is the 10th episode and in our third season. We are brought to you today by BoyleSports, working in association with them, which we absolutely love. And we have a jam-packed show for you today. This is, of course, where you get everything you need if you're a jumps fan, because week in, week out, we discuss what's just happened, but also what we have to look forward to. And what a week it's been. Cheltenham Trials, but also the Dublin Racing Festival coming up. Loads to get through. But before we do, please hit subscribe on our YouTube channel. I say it week in, week out. Please keep doing that, because then you won't miss a single episode of Off the Fence. As always, I am joined by Barry Geraghty and Tony Keenan. Barry, let's start with you. How are you?
Very good, Vanessa. Enjoyed Cheltenham on Saturday. Happened to make it over, and brilliant day's racing. It was like a festival in the day. Brilliant handicaps and just, real good quality and brilliant buzz there.
Absolutely. We missed each other. Didn't see you there, like passing ships, but I concur with those thoughts. I was also there on Saturday and it was just top notch from start to finish. Not maybe the results everyone was hoping for or thought would happen, but wonderful all the same. Tony, did you enjoy watching it from home?
No, not at all. Oh God almighty. I was at a bloody child's birthday party all day Saturday. It was my own child, so I suppose I had to go. Look, I was getting messages, this, that and the other, and I couldn't believe when an argument got beaten. I was seeing someone's on the wind-up here, but there was a lot going on there, and a lot of, a few, anyway, surprising results that hopefully we'll have a pick through now and see what to make of them heading on to March.
Yeah, well, let's do that right now. Let's start with our What Happened Where section. And as Tony has touched upon, a few surprise results, and none more so than an Energumene being beat in the Clarence House chase, well, the rearranged Clarence House. Barry, we'll start with you on this. Of course, Editeur Du Gite winning it. Edwardstone, confident ride, but didn't get there in the end. What can we take from this race looking ahead now to the rematch, hopefully with all these horses come March?
Well, I suppose the first main difference is it will be on the old course rather than the new course, and that was my concern for Energumene going into this. We mentioned it last week, so there's a big difference. It's the new course is more stamina based, and I think that suited the winner really well, Editeur Du Gite. I thought he got a brilliant ride from Niall O'Hulan. He kept the pace even. He quickened from 4 out. After the other horses ran keen, both Energumene and Edwardstone ran keen. I think that track would suit with it more of a stamina basis. You're not going as strong, whereas the old course is sharper and quicker. I think you'll find Energumene will settle better at the pace, because if Editeur Du Gite is the horse who leads in the champion chase, that Energumene will be travelling easy on his tail, but he'll be going to gear quicker, so he'll be more settled. He was a little bit fresh and looked a little bit big in the parading, so I wouldn't just write him off on this. He would be, for me, the horse to come out of it. I'd love him in the championship still, and he's probably good value. Edwardstone ran a brilliant race. He waited from off the pace. Same thing, ran a bit keen, and I think there was a bit of a team here with this horse. Both Energumene was 47 days since he last ran. Edwardstone was 56 if you exclude Kempton. So both horses went into this race really fresh. So I don't think it played to their strengths, obviously. But Edwardstone ran a brilliant race and just got worn out of it again in the death, having made up a good bit of ground. But for me, I think I'd still side with Energumene. I think he's just a higher cruising speed, will be better suited by the old course.
Intriguing. You're taking Energumene out of it. I'm definitely taking Edwardstone out of it, who is the 2-1 favourite now at the head of the market for the champion chase. What are your thoughts here, Tony?
Yeah, I think I'd be more with you, Vanessa. I don't want to dismiss the winner here out of hand completely. He seems to have improved an awful lot in his last couple of starts, but Edwardstone, to me, looked the best horse on the day. Like Barry mentioned, I think the lack of a recent run is very important with him. He seemed to thrive on racing last season, been kept busy, and effectively didn't have a run since Sandown in December, but he did beat like Geraghty, who is the Sandown specialist of Sandown specialists that's around at the moment, easily. So that's a top level of form. On 3 of his last 4 completed starts, he's ran to a very high level, taken out the entry. It was the end of the season, very hard season. I thought this was another excellent effort out of him. I'm not sure whether the raid was ill-judged or it was a raid for the next day, but had to take him back a little bit to get him settled. But as the race unfolded, he had to make up a huge amount of ground. The jockey was still kind of sitting on him, turning in. He was travelling smoothly. He made up that ground very, very quickly, and the winner just pulled out a little bit more. I'd be expecting him to improve from this. I think he fully deserved of a spot at the head of the market at Champion Chase at the moment. I wasn't so keen on an Energumen. I'm not sure they got the tactics right. He didn't really seem to enjoy being in behind horses. He jumped well, but he kept jumping into the back of horses, which wasn't ideal. Now, he's often gone forward in his races, and they did drop him out in the Champion Chase last year. Although it was more of an extreme dropout ride rather than in amongst horses. I'm not sure he really liked that. But at the same time, that was the only real excuse I could come up for with him. He was really strong in the market. Like the race was a week later. That shouldn't have really made an awful lot of difference. This mistake that he made at the last, it was only the cause of him getting beaten further rather than the cause of him losing his race. Like Edwardstone was the only horse going forward out of the two of them at that point. I wouldn't be a massive fan of his profile going into the race. Like a Willie Mullins top-notcher going into it of a below par performance. Like he was only just ahead of Amarillo Sky. Amarillo Sky was returned lame after the race, so it's a really subpar performance out of him. Like I looked at Willie Mullins, I think he's had 17 winners of Open Grade 1s at the festival, so Gold Cups and Champion Hurdles and so on and so forth. Like 14 of them had won their previous start, 4 of them were second and 1 of them fell. So they usually tend to be coming into the race in absolute peak form, and it's hard to argue he's not coming into it in peak form. And again, maybe it was the tactics, and maybe it was the I'm sorry, I'm trying to keep a straight face of this one, the white boards on the fences. Like this was absolutely comical. I thought a couple of years ago, when parody Twitter accounts were a thing about 7 or 8 years ago, I was all on for setting up a parody Twitter account called Silly Mullins. Just all the mad stuff that he says, and this definitely goes into the bracket of Silly Mullins. Like the white fence board that come on, that's just taking the mickey out of everyone there, I think. So hopefully that they'll have found something wrong with him between now and then. I believe he said he was a little bit sore afterwards, might be just normal post-race soreness, but I don't think the colour of the fence post was the beating of him, shall we say.
I think a lot of people would concur with those thoughts, Tony. Let's stick with you and move on to the Cotswolds Chase, where we got to see Ahoy Senor beat Sounds Russian, a staying on Noble Yates and a potentially below par Protectorat. And I'm not entirely sure Galopin Des Champs at the top of the Gold Cup market at 11-8 will have been losing much sleep after this performance, Tony.
No, although I would expect this form to be turned around quite a bit come the festival. It's kind of a messy enough sort of race that the leader was been chopped and changed all along. Your man Sounds Russian probably went on a bit soon, and then he made mistakes just as he went on. His head carriage wouldn't be the greatest. Ahoy Senor just appeals as a horse that might do something silly in a Gold Cup. Emmett Mullins' horse, I thought he didn't really have the pace when it mattered, and then stayed on. So he's dependent maybe on two things. Maybe getting a slow ground Gold Cup might help him. More maybe one to run on into a place from behind, or there's a possibility that putting the cheek pieces back on him will sharpen him up and get him to travel a bit sweeter. He wore those in the Grand National win last season. I actually thought Protectorat ran a bit better than the form. I know he looks like a disappointing favourite here, but to me he just looked like a horse that needed to run. He had a big penalty, as did Noble Yates. But Protector ran a quite different race to Noble Yates. He was overly keen. He can do that a little bit. And then he kind of travelled well into it, coming down the hill, and then seemed to blow up. And look, if he'd have faded out of it from there, you'd just say, that's disappointing. How's he going to get him back from to the Gold Cup? But he actually stayed on quite well then and closed the gap up the hill. So I'm just wondering, is Dan Skelton maybe playing the long game here? Like, was there any real advantage to him winning a Grade 2 in January when he's already won a Grade 1 Betfair Chase, and the Gold Cup is the big plan? So he's been pushed out. I think he's kind of doubled in price for the Gold Cup. Now, I'm not saying he's necessarily good enough to win a Gold Cup, because he may not be good enough. He wasn't good enough last year, and the younger up-and-coming Irish horses like the Favourite or like Statler may just have too much from him. But I think he might be able to reverse form with the 3 that finished ahead of him in March.
Okay, well, Barry, what were your takeaway thoughts from the Cotswold Chase then?
Well, I'd agree with a lot of what Tony said about Protectorat. For me, he ran like a horse that needed to run. He was very fresh, he was very keen, which he can be, but I think that would be a reflection of the 70-day break he's had since the Betfair Chase. He was well primed for that, so they obviously gave him a chance to recover. So for me, he ran like a horse who needed the run, a bit keen, bit fresh, hit a little bit of a flat spot if you like, probably took a blow, top of the hill with 4 to jump, got outpaced, but ran on again going to the line. So I would forgive him that. I would imagine he will turn that round. Having said that, it's hard to see him win a Gold Cup on the back of that, but I think his arse will be involved. Noble Yates, on the other hand, I thought he ran a good race. He was outpaced a lot of the way, but he finished reasonably strongly. And I'd say he will be a lot better for the cheek pieces that he wore in the Grand National. So I think it was an interesting run from him. I wouldn't be jumping up and down and say he's going to win the Gold Cup, but I think he'll be a lot more competitive in a Gold Cup than Ahoy Senor or Sounds Russian will be.
Yeah, I'm with you. I was quite taken with the Noble Yates run. And Barry, will stick with you for a quick word on Gold Tweed, who won the Cleve Hurdle in fine style at a huge price, but seemingly very unexpected. But you can't ignore a performance like that. I was very taken with him.
No, really good performance. Obviously a horse on the up. I thought Rex Dingle set a lovely pace on Dashel Drasher, dictated it, and only one horse could get past him. Paisley Park wasn't suited by that steady run race, but good performance by the winner, showed good pace, has the potential then in a true run race for more, a little bit keen at times, so definitely one on the up. And it was a brilliant result for the French. Gabriel, who trained him, used to work with us and Nicky Henderson's years ago, so good result for him, and you saw the celebrations after. So no, it was brilliant, a little flavour of the continent, if you like.
Yeah, I loved it. I loved seeing their delight. And the same sort of applies for Rock My Way, who of course won the novice hurdle. And we should also mention Comfort Zone as well, Barry, just as a couple of the other noteworthy performances from Cheltenham.
Yeah, Comfort Zone and scriptwriter, great finish. Paddy went wide for better ground, maybe just got racing a little bit early, but John Joe was brilliant on Comfort Zone. But they went into this race on about 130, 131 each. They might go up to the high 130s, which to me would make them more Boodles contenders than horses for the Triumph Hurdle. But great race, good performances, and a bit of a chance going forward. And the other horse, Rock My Way, sorry, yeah. Yeah, he was a good performance as well, but Henry II was giving him £5. He was 10 lengths behind him. He's rated 133, so I can't imagine that any of the Hermes Allen or Gaelic Warrior or Champ Kylie would be sweating on the box after seeing that race.
No, I think that's a fair comment. Let's fly up to Doncaster and just have a quick rattle through the good performances from there. And of course, none were more impressive than Epatante, who's now 7-2 for the Mares Hurdle after winning the Yorkshire Rose. And never mind going forwards, just great to see her put in a performance like that and be back in a winner's enclosure, doing what she should have done. But I was delighted for her, to be fair.
Yeah, no, likewise. Great performance. She travelled strongly, jumped really well. I thought the best she jumped all season. Quickened well, but just good for her to get her head in front again. A mare like that, it would do her power of good just to get that result. And just great to see her well-being. But she's on song heading for the festival, I'd say.
And what about Boot Hill being turned over by Tommy's Oscar? Again, a bit of a surprise result. Does that knock the John Bon form, Barry?
I don't think so. Tommy's Oscar, he's very good on flat tracks. He won the New One Hurdle last year, and Haydock put in a good performance there. So I'm not fully convinced it was that bad of a run. Boot Hill ran well. He was giving him £5 as well. But Boot Hill was 8 lengths behind John Bon, but John Bon won comfortably. So I think it'd be unfair to take a dim view on John Bon on this run. But I think getting the £5 Tommy's Oscar was well in on a track that he was going to love.
Okay, let's go back to Ireland, Tony, and bring you back in. We saw Teahupoo win the Galmoy Hurdle and is now shot to the head of the betting for the Stayers Hurdle. Off the back of that is now 5-2 for the Stayers Hurdle at Cheltenham. We discussed this race on last week's show. Was this the performance you wanted from him, Tony?
Yeah, as a backer of his, I was delighted with it. Absolutely no issue with the 3 miles. I thought he would improve for it. He has kind of improved for it. There's still the concerns there about the track. Possibly, I think he didn't handle the downhill part in the Champion Hurdle last year and better ground. Now, Gordon Elliott is of the opinion that it's the trip is the issue. Was the issue last year when he was running those good 2 mile races, and I kind of would take the same opinion. We'll find out in the Stayers Hurdle whether that is the case. But to me, he's the horse with the potential. He was very impressive under a £9 penalty last Thursday. I thought Davy Russell was in front, a long way from home on a horse that wasn't proven over the trip, but it seemed to be no bother to him at all. And yeah, look, I think if they get some cut in the ground, he will be very much deserving of his place at the head of the market. It's just if he gets really fast, which it shouldn't really do, because to be racing on that track for the first time on that day, worthy favourite for me anyway.
Worthy favourite, Lordy. I definitely took a different view to that. What about you, Barry, in this sphere?
I'm with Tony in this one, Vanessa, sorry. I was impressed by him. He didn't have an awful lot to do to beat what he beat, and I don't think he necessarily proved he got the trip as such, because it wasn't as strong a test, but it was a good performance. I'd have no concern about him with the trip, and I would agree with a lot of what Tony said and what Gordon said as regards. I think the step up and trip will probably cancel out the ground issue, if you like. I don't think he turned up at all last year in the Champion Hurdle or in Punchestown, so I'd nearly draw a line through those, albeit his best form is on soft ground. If it's any way on the slow side, bit of juice and all, I'd say there'd be no concern with him over 3 mile.
Okay, interesting. And you boys are much wiser than me, but I just think that we're underestimating Home by the Lee. I think he's probably the value price now in the Stayers Hurdle. Let's move on, because we also saw Sir Gerhard make his belated chase debut last week as well. Tony, were you impressed? He's 6-1 for the Brown Advisory. Were you taken with this?
Not really, but sure, Willie Mullen's horse jumping badly on chase debut and still winning easily, it happens all the time. No, and it's not a knock. This is just the way they're trained. They did appreciate jump brilliantly the first day, and Fabiolo made a couple of horror mistakes. Flambera made a mistake or two. This is what they do. Dice Dynamo was the one who probably jumped best of all, but he was completely unpressured and so on. So the jumping part of it, I suppose the difference between him and some of the aforementioned ones is that it seems unlikely he's going to fit another run in with him before Cheltenham. Now that would be a most un-Mullins-like thing to do. I actually put this into a database. He has never run a horse in a Cheltenham novice chase that has only had one chase start, which is I found that very hard to believe. I thought there had to be one or two. There was one horse now that went for this race, Scilly Isles. He was a really impressive winner now of this same race that Sir Gerhard won on yesterday's day, and I think he was favoured for the Oracle or damn close to it afterwards, but he actually got hurt schooling, I think, race course school at Navan, and didn't make it. So that would be one big concern. And also, William was talking about the Brown Advisory, the Broadway for him afterwards. He really would have the Antichrist of a profile now for the Brown Advisory. He is a complete and utter Cheltenham horse. He's been brilliant at Cheltenham, 2 festival wins, bumper up to the Ballymore trip. But if you look at the winners of the Brown Advisory, they're generally very hardened horses there. The last 5, what have we got? Lamb Press, Monkfish, Champ, Top of the Game, Presenting Percy, all would have had plenty of experience. And going back even before that, it would also be the case. I think I recall the year Don Poley won it, like people were saying, God, he's a bit light in experience going into it. I think he'd won on debut, and then he won the 3 mile race at Christmas at Leopardstown. So that's to me that's a massive question, and so much of a question that I would wonder, will he revert back to maybe the Turners or something like that? Because I think a Brown Advisory against some of these hardened horses, it doesn't look like the greatest running of it perhaps, but these sexier ones, shall we say, do have a habit of getting found out in it a little bit. Interesting.
Barry, what are your thoughts on what Tony's just said there?
Yeah, interesting points. But for me, the one thing about Sir Gerhard is he jumps a fence. We'll say he jumped it okay. He made one bad mistake. He took a chance at one, but he isn't the scopiest individual in the world. And you could see that jumping the 4th last from the side-on shot. Larky debut, pinged the fence, gave it air, where Sir Gerhard just skipped across it. He isn't a scopy horse, and you could see Paul rode him hard at the last. Now, if he was, your natural pacey horse over a fence that you would expect him to be, Paul would only have to release an inch of rein. So for that reason, he's going to be better up and trip. So I'd imagine that's why Willie seemed fairly confident that was the way he was going with him. Because when he's going over further, he just has a little bit more time to organise himself. He's not out of his comfort zone. He can measure his fences. They're coming at him in his own time, if you like. So interesting points Tony makes as regards not being battle hardened. I would agree with that, but I think this is so classy. For me, I'd have him ahead of Gerhard and Mesnil, and probably a lot of them in it, but he'd have a tougher task to try and beat Mighty Potter or even appreciate it in the Turners. So I'd imagine the Brown Advisory would be the place for him, and to me he'd be the classiest one in it.
Intriguing. Can't wait to just build up then to these novice chasers, talking about all these angles in the weeks to come. Barry, quick word on the Thyestes itself, because of course Carefully Selected went off favourite and won that race, but really it was Paul Townend that got all the plaudits. Explain why.
Oh yeah, it was a brilliant ride by Paul. Well, Willie had done brilliant firstly to get him back one run after being off for the best part of 2 years before that, so that was a great performance too. But Paul gave him a brilliant ride like that on the back of that delayed preparation. But the horse started to get competitive down the back, and Paul just took him out of it, because he knew if he did, he got switched on before you'd know it, you'd be upsides in front. And he had 11.8, so he'd plenty of weight. You would get worn down later on. So Paul kept him wide. He found the best of the ground. But like that, he delivered a nice, slow, steady challenge, and just only got fully committed from the back of the last. So a brilliant ride for Paul, who had been on the sick bed for about 2 days before that, and lost the best part of half a stone. He was violently sick, so it didn't show on his performance afterwards. He was strong as an ox on him in the finish, and no, a really good finish and a really good ride.
Very impressive indeed from Paul. And of course we should mention Tony Echoes in Rain, who won at Naas in fine fashion and is now a 6-1 shot for the Mares Hurdle. Lots of people taken with this performance. What were your takeaways from it?
Yeah, a good performance, doing what she was supposed to be doing, I suppose, getting not just the kind of mare's allowance, but some of the other runners were penalised, but she was visually very good. She also came from off the pace, which was hard. It's hard to do at Naas any day, and seemed particularly hard yesterday on the hurdle track. She's actually become very consistent since they've taken the hood off and just gone with the tongue tie. Hard to knock her form on that. She was still in with a chance of placing at least when she fell 2 out in the Hatton's Grace. I do wonder if maybe a strongly run 2 miles might be better for her than 2.5. She got very lit up in that Hatton's Grace, but settled better yesterday when there was a bit of a gallop on over 2. So that would be a concern. Where is she going for the Mare's Hurdle, which I presume she's far more likely to go for that than maybe a champion hurdle race type.
Okay, and what about a quick mention for Ashroe Diamond, who on Saturday won the graded race there? Is that Willie's #1 mare's novice hope at 7-2, Tony?
I suppose she has to be. She's running the graded races against the geldings and now come back into this race. She does pick up a penalty off the back of this. Jumping wasn't wonderful at points. I suppose she had to get out of a bit of bother. She does have a bit of speed, which I think the way the race was run suited her at Fairy House on Saturday. I backed Halka de Taberta. I backed her for the dawn run before this. Wasn't really happy with the ride David Russell gave it, to be honest. I thought he was weighted in front a bit too much. And there might be better I think he wanted to lead kind of the whole way around. It was never going to be forthcoming from the rest, and I thought he maybe would have kicked on a bit mid-race. Like Naas had suited her seemingly to go forward, but I wouldn't be surprised if she ran a bit better in the dawn run if she was able to take a lead. Like that race as a habit have been really strongly run over the years. Tends to draw full field, and usually been dropped out a little bit is the place to be in that race, almost like a county hurdle run for novice mares. But I just wonder, is there something there to beat Ashroe Diamond? She's fine, she's done the job, but the penalty she picks up for Saturday's win isn't ideal. And it's a very competitive division, and Lucia is in there too, but she hasn't had a run since that initial start, missing the Tarlworth, so be interested to see does she get a prep in before Cheltenham.
Oh yes, I'd slightly forgotten about her. Barry, what were your takeaways from Ashroe Diamond's race anyway?
You know, she obviously a good performance from Ashroe Diamond, but as Tony mentioned, she's going to pick up a penalty for that. I thought the runner-up ran a good race, Jatari. She is out of a full sister to Jesky, and it was her second run over hurdles. She's only a 5-year-old. I thought she battled well, it's just a good solid performance, and when you turn that penalty around, I think that's going to bring her a bit closer to Ashroe Diamond, but also just the experience of only being her second run over hurdles, and as I say, as a 5-year-old, she's still open to more improvement.
Okay, well look, that's a rattle through what we've just seen over the last 7 days in the jump racing world, and we will now be looking ahead to the Dublin Racing Festival. But before we do, a little shout out for the At The Races app. If you haven't got it already on your phone, please do go and download it, because it's the best app you'd have on your phone. You can watch all replays on there. You've got results, you've got betting, you've got race cards, you've got news, you've got everything you could ever wish for, and it's all in one place. So go and download the At The Races app right now. Thank you very much. much. Let's look ahead to the coming weekend, which of course is Dublin Racing Festival. It is going to be absolutely fascinating. So many things to look forward to, and we will know so many more answers to many of our questions, hopefully, this time next week. So we're going to take a look at some of the feature races with the boys. But Tony, before we do, ground conditions at Leopardstown, what can we expect? What's the build-up like over there at the track?
Just before the ground conditions, it is a bit the WMF as well as the DRF coming up. It is the Willie Mullins Festival more so than any other in the last while. And for that reason, I don't love it from a betting point of view, or at least I don't love a lot of the Grade 1 races, betting tin ones of Willie Mullins. They do just tend to turn up here and win. Paul Townend seems to have gotten very, very good at just landing on the right one here, so fair play to him. So I would be more looking forward to some of the shoulder races, maybe the handicaps, maybe some of the bumpers and other races there. Willie Mullins just doesn't have quite such a strong hand. I do think some of the anti-post prices, they're very difficult because Willie Mullins holds kind of all the cards and things like that. Look, on the ground, I think there's a little bit of cut in the going at the moment, but there is no rain forecast at all really for Foxrock and Leopardstown this week, talking about 0.5 millimetres and things like that. So they are going to be watering on the chase course, and they seem to get that right at Christmas. In terms of watering, there certainly weren't too many complaints from trainers that I heard, and there weren't too many non-runners, which is probably the most important thing. But it would open up the possibility of, with watering, there's always a chance that there's going to be a bias, and I think Barry pointed this out very well last year, that being on the outside was the place to be, and horses that went down the inside struggled. So it'll be something to bear in mind when you go to those bigger field handicap chases, like I think there's a Bulmer's handicap chase 2.5 miles on the Sunday that tends to draw quite a big field, and there's a 2 mile handicap on the Saturday. Like maybe it won't matter so much in those novice chases and the Ashroe Cup with the smaller fields, but just something to keep an eye out for.
Barry, are you keeping an eye out for that, as Tony puts it, in terms of track bias and the likes with the watering?
Well, there's a degree of that, on the ground, because you've had 4 days at Christmas on that track, and on the chase track in particular, where you don't have any other ground to play with. It's the same ground. So there will be a little bit of that out wide. As regards the watering, though, I think that the reflection is in the amount of runners there is, and the fact that Willie and everyone is committing, Gordon the same, they're all happy to go. Leopardstown have watered this track heavily all through the autumn and right through Christmas and everything. Whenever it was needed, there was water given. So they're back watering again. It's not like last year where they're watering on ground that's quick underneath, if you like, or dry underneath. This ground is going to be saturated all autumn. So there's moisture there. They're only topping it up. So I'd say there's no great concern. And for the same reason, there's no rumbles of any question marks about not running this or not running that. So I'd say we'll have beautiful ground at Leopardstown, and you'll see plenty of runners.
Very interesting thoughts there in regards to the track, but let's move on to the action that will be taking place, and we'll kick off with the Nathaniel Lacey Novices Hurdle. And of course we have Good Land at the top of the betting here at 15-8, Hidden Valley Lake in there at 7-2, American Mike 9-2, Grange Clare West 11-2. A load of Willie Mullins horses may run in here, but Good Land at the top of the market. The Barry Connell horse is a horse that you've been a fan of for a while, Tony.
Yeah, it's probably a race where Willie Mullins doesn't have quite as many horses. His kind of Albert Bartlett, Hope Embassy Gardens ran at Thurles the week before last. I would be keen on Good Land for this race, albeit not at his current price. There's a long market cycle to come though with this horse. Like I think he was initially put in 6 or 7-1 for this race, and now he's into 2-1. But there'll be plenty of other trainers and connections that will fancy the horses. I'd be expecting him to drift. He'd be the horse I'd be keen to get, but hopefully at some point. Really impressed with him. His win on the December 29th, Embassy Gardens, has come out and given that form a boost, and actually a few quid on this horse for the Ballymore Cheltenham last week. He was actually, I think, in the market for both the Ballymore and the Albert Bartlett, but he was actually only entered in the Ballymore. I think that's right. I think he does have a degree of speed. You wouldn't need to be going 3 miles with him yet anyway. Okay, on we go to the Spring Juvenile. Lossymouth is at the top of the betting, 2-5 currently. Blood Destiny next best at 9-4. And Barry, this Blood Destiny is a horse, of course, you've been very keen on throughout the series so far and off the fence. But do you expect him to show up here against Lossymouth?
Well, they're both in here, and obviously been different owners. There's every chance. With Blood Destiny had his second run last day. That was 3 weeks before this run. So I was kind of surprised that Willie had left him in, but he's there. If both lined up, I I wouldn't be surprised to see Lossiemouth coming out on top on this stage. Just it mightn't be as competitive as it would be in Cheltenham, but I might have a slightly different view come the festival in March. Just with a proper end-to-end gallop, I think that would suit Blood Destiny, where he could be just a bit vulnerable to Lossiemouth's speed around Leopardstown if it wasn't just ran at that level of pace that it could be at the festival. But it'll be interesting to see if both line up, and that will be interesting if they do.
Blood Destiny gets beat, then drift out to a nice bigger price for March, and then we'll all lump on Barry. The Irish Arkle, Dysart Dynamo 7-4, appreciate it. 2-1, El Fabiolo's in there, Banbridge as well, Saint Ouen. I mean, again, unsure of what of Willie's is going to show up here, but I know Barry, Dysart Dynamo is a horse that you've liked the whole way along.
Yeah, well, he really impressed me in Leopardstown. I just loved how he jumped for a horse who was so keen and free over hurdles, and would take a chance. He obviously fell in the Supreme at the third last, but no, he looked so measured, so accurate. He was still a little bit keen. He went off, he blazed the trail if you like, but it wasn't just the tear away. But there's going to be an awful lot of pace in this race. If all line up, you have Flame Bear who blitzed around Fairy House, El Fabiolo the same as well. Sen Ryby, the horse who'd get to take a lead and take a toe and follow along. It'll be interesting to see if Appreciated goes here or the 2-5, because Willie seems to have a stranglehold on this one. So I'd be hoping he maybe goes for the 2-5. Okay. What
about you, Tony, with the Irish Gold Cup? We've got Galopin Des Champs, of course, looking to run here at 4-8. Statler's in there at 4-1. Conflated back at the track that he loves, 13-2. Ken Boy, the old boy, 10s, and Envoy Allen in there. Where are you looking in this race? Are we all just lumping on the favourite?
Well, the most interesting thing to see here will be Galopin Des Champs at the trip, and that's kind of, we might find out here, does he stay at the 3 miles? Most chases at Leopardstown are truly run. He's had one go at 3 miles before, Punchestown in a novice hurdle. He won that, but that was a very falsely run race. So I don't know, would you be taking that as gospel that he stays the trip? I kind of have 2 pieces of information, I suppose, that would suggest to me that maybe the trip is not an absolute certainty. The first one is from this meeting last year. He ran I think it's the 2 mile 5 novice chase, and Chac and Bourgeois was on the same card in the Dublin chase. So Galopin Des Champs, I think, was over the same part of the track as Chacan, 0.6 of a second slower than him. So to me, he's very fast if he can go with a grade 1 2 miler for a horse just having a second start over fences. So that suggests a lot of speed to me. Now, look, maybe he's frank off the jumps, and maybe that's just a sign of his absolute ability, and he's going to be effective over all sorts of trips. But in most cases, horses have a trip preference, and that would suggest that he's got his fair share of speed. And the other little thing that I would have a slight worry about the trip is the Mullins team had 2 choices last year where they could have gone 2.5 or gone 3, and on both occasions they went 2.5. So they went 2.5 at Cheltenham, the Turners rather than the Brown Advisory. Now maybe they looked at the forecast for the Wednesday, the Brown Advisory, and they said, it's going to be a little bit of a slog, let's stay away from that. Fair enough. And then they had the option of either Fairy House or Punchestown, and they went Fairy House for the kind of flat 2.5 miles. So they're now saying they're not really worried with trip, and maybe they'll be right. And maybe it won't even be an issue it's on Saturday this race now rather than a Sunday, but it is a little worry for me just looking at those things. But we'll find, if we don't find out on Saturday, we will find out at Cheltenham, because that's going to be another stiffer test again. His opposition on Saturday doesn't look like it's going to be too strong. Like Willie Munson making noises, Statler may just go straight to Cheltenham, and I think that was also mentioned with Conflated 2, who would be the 2 obvious ones to give him a race.
Ooh, very interesting trip concerns. Do you concur, Barry?
I actually don't really. The 2 races over 2.5 last season, I think they committed to 2.5 because of his style of racing. He was running keen, he was brave, he was charging offences. Where this season he ran the John Durkin, he dropped in just behind the pace, he was more relaxed, his jumping was more conservative. He looked more like a horse who would travel and jump and settle at a 3 mile pace this year, where last year I don't think it would have been an option. I'd say he would have blazed and then would have been a sitting duck later on. So just on that point, but that doesn't guarantee he gets the trip. I'd imagine he will have no problem getting the trip in Leopardstown, but whether he gets it in Cheltenham will be another day's work. But if Statler and Conflated don't turn up, it's definitely a 1-horse race. But for me, in the short term, the trip wouldn't be a concern. Maybe come March, maybe, but not with the way he raced in the John Durkin. I was very happy with him.
Okay, racing style. Fingers crossed he can stay the trip. Let's do a quick mention, Barry, for the Ladbrokes Novices Chase. We get to see Mighty Potter here, 9-4 at the top of the market. A load of Willie Mullins horses in after that, including James de Burley, Appreciate It, Gail Adam O'Neill, etc., etc. But for me, Mighty Potter, I've got a real soft spot for him, and I'm very much looking forward to him running here.
Yeah, and likewise, really impressive. Improved with each run, jumps brilliantly. He even half stumbled in Ferias at the third and fourth last and picked up straight away and galloped away. He was really impressive there. James de Burley, good winner as well in Brown Ferias. Good level of form back a few seasons ago over hurdles. You'd have to respect him. But for me, if Appreciate It did step across from the 2 mile and took his chance here, I think he would be the biggest threat to Mighty Potter, and that would be a proper clash.
Okay, and Barry, I'll stick with you for the Dublin Chase. Blue Lord is your 1-3 favourite in the anti-post market. Gentleman Demi in there at 6s. So Royale, if he was to come over, one of the rare UK runners. But this feels like a very weak renewal of this race, in fairness.
Well, it probably does in depth, but Blue Lord was very good at Christmas. Looked like he stepped up a good bit on what he did last season. So if he was to reproduce that level of form, he'd be very hard to beat. Gentleman to Me, who beat Edward Stone in Aintree last season, he was 46 lengths, I think it was, behind Blue Lord at Christmas. So he's a good bit of turnaround on that. But if he could find that form of last season, so in an Aintree, he would be the nearest challenger to him. Scilly Royale, will he take his chance if Blue Lord's going to run with the same owners? You'd have to wonder. But no, Blue Lord will be hard to beat.
And on to the Irish Champion Hurdle, and many eyes will be on Honeysuckle here. Obviously lost her unbeaten run when we last saw her. She takes on State Man if she lines up here. She's 7-4 second favourite behind the even money State Man in here. This is going to be a really interesting renewal. What are you expecting to see from those near the top of the market, Barry?
Well, that's what it will be. It will be interesting. I think we're all maybe a bit quick to write off Honeysuckle. She got beaten in Ferias in probably the best Hatton's Grace that she's ran in. I think she's better around Leopardstown. She's better going left-handed. It often is drier and probably it's closer to good on a lot of days, which would be more in her favour, but I think it's going to be a bit slower, which obviously being on the slow set I think will suit Stateman. It's going to be a brilliant clash, but for me the sleeper in there is Vauban. I thought he ran a brilliant race behind Stateman last time, considering how badly he jumped. So I think with that bit of practice under his belt and given improvement, he could be the dark one here of those three, but I think it'll be a brilliant clash. I have full respect for Stateman, but I'd be very much Honeysuckle. I'd expect a big show from around Leopardstown.
Yeah, I'll be watching brief only for me, but I'll be rooting for Honeysuckle on the basis that that'll just really add a bit of spice leading up to the Champion Hurdle come March. Tony, let's pick you up here for the Tatzel's Irish Novices Hurdle, the grade 1 over the shorter trip. Facile Vega, the 4-11 favourite, high definition in there, looking to back up his win from last time at 9-2, second best in the market. How are you playing this race?
Yeah, kind of cooled a bit on any plans to take on Facile Vega in the near term anyway, just thinking about it over the last few weeks, for a couple of reasons. First of all, I don't really love any of the opposition. It's alright saying you're going to take on a horse, but you have to find something half decent to beat him with. I'm not sure that there is anything there at the moment. And the other thing is, looking back at Christmas, the way that the Mullins team were quite happy to kind of expend other half decent horses to set the race up from at Christmas would say that they really don't think there's any great insight here that he just is the one, and by a long way the one, and the fact that something like Imperial Pass would probably avoid him. Don't really see him going here, don't really see him taking him on at Cheltenham. So yeah, he's one. I'm not, maybe next season when he goes in against the open hurdlers might be a different story, but at the moment no, I just cool the jets on that plan a little bit.
Cooler jets. I like that saying. What about you, Barry, looking at this race? Is it all aboard Facile Vega?
Well, I think it is in a lot of regards. I think it's going to be very hard to beat, but I was really impressed in Imperial Pasto at Punchestown. I just love how he jumped. He was so natural. I think he's a horse with a lot of ability. If he did happen to line up, he would be the biggest threat, and he's a horse I'd definitely keep an eye on going forward in the season.
Okay, well, we're nearly wrapping up the show, but we should just give a mention to some of the UK action. Obviously, all eyes will be on the Dublin Racing Festival, but we do have the Scilly Isles over here in England this weekend, and I suppose an interesting entry with Jerry Colomb coming over. Well, look, it has an entry anyway. Thunder Rock in there and Balco Coastal, but Gordon Elliott's horse, Barry, intriguing to see him even have an entry here.
Yeah, definitely. He's 5-5 on the race course. He put in a good performance at Limerick at Christmas. He relished the soft ground there, so he needed to be every bit as soft as it can be in Sandown. But I suppose it also gives Gordon the opportunity to split him from Mighty Potter, which would be his clash in Leopardstown. So maybe he'll go there, maybe he won't, but he'll be very interested if he does. Of the others, I thought Bold Endeavour is a horse who's on the up. He's 2 from 2 since joining Nicky Henderson's. Really good performance last time. And I'd say his arse going the right way. So it's probably not a vintage renewal, but it looks competitive, I'll say.
Not a vintage renewal, and we'll all be focused on the Dublin Racing Festival, but that could end up being a tasty little contest over here in the UK. That about wraps up the show. We have rattled through a look back on the week just gone and a look ahead to the Dublin Racing Festival, and of course next Monday we will be reviewing the Dublin Racing Festival in detail, and as I said earlier, we'll have plenty of answers to many of our questions, I would think. But for now, boys, Barry and Tony, thank you very much for your contributions as always. For viewers and listeners out there, thank you for joining us once again. Do not forget to hit subscribe on our YouTube channel. Give us some feedback in the comments box as well. Like, retweet on YouTube, on Twitter. You know the drill by now. But for now, thank you very much for watching, and do go and enjoy your week and enjoy the weekend's action at the Dublin Racing Festival. That was Off the Fence.